Minimalist, Scandi, industrial, modern, contemporary, mid-mod, bohemian, coastal, beach, farmhouse, rustic, traditional, Victorian, colonial, Mediterranean, French country, Art Deco, Art Nouveau, retro, vintage, Hollywood Regency, tropical, eclectic, gothic, shabby chic, transitional, zen, nautical, southwestern, urban modernism, and more. So many design styles exist in our world. Today we're going to talk about the top 5 that are in Australia at the moment and how I think you could implement them to your space. Stick around. Hello and welcome back to Disco Designs. My name is Dave. I'm an interior designer based out of Brisbane in Queensland, Australia. Welcome to the show. Thank you again for tuning in. Just a reminder that like last week's episode, this week is available as both the traditional audio podcast that I have and also as a video on Spotify, or you can tune in on my YouTube channel as well if you want to see some of the accompanying images that are going to happen with this week's episode, and it might kind of be a bit relevant because we are going to be talking about design styles. Let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. As always, what is a design style? So a design style is simply an aesthetic or a look that has certain elements to it, which we can use to create a feeling or reference something in an interior space. Really, what's a really good example people would know? Art Deco is probably a very popular or well-known art style. So that Art Deco is now over 100 years old, formed in the 1920s originally. And it came as a response to Art Nouveau before it. And it features a lot of geometry, a lot of dual tone colors, a lot of dramatic lighting and pattern throughout it. And you'll see many, many examples all across the world. It was probably a design style that really, at least in the Western world, had a big sprawl and a big effect. The Chrysler Building, for example, in New York is a very good example of Art Deco style and design in its form and geometry and the shapes that you see within it. But across the world, there are so many different design styles that we see trickling around, and they meander across the world, and each geographical location will have its unique spin on a design style. And I know videos like this have been done a million times. If you're a consumer of other interior design videos or podcasts, you'll be like, man, I have seen so many videos about design styles, etc. I know all about modern farmhouse. The reason I wanted to do this episode is because I haven't seen too many specifically talking about Australian design styles. And I think that we are a unique entity unto our own. We're physically, geographically separated from the rest of the world. And as such, we sort of have this style that is, we take what we see elsewhere and we kind of make it our own. And I think we've kind of blended some styles into its own unique iteration of maybe the source material. So let's talk through today. I'm going to go through 5 major design styles, which I think encompass a lot of what we see in Australia and what I think works and what doesn't work in a space. Let's start at the beginning. And I'm going to say overarchingly, if I had to put a broad stroke design style across Australia, what would it be? It's probably inspired, contemporary design. It's somewhat inspired by Scandinavian living and Scandinavian design styles. Scandinavian design styles have a certain minimalism to them. They're fairly pared back. They really lean into and promote the indoor-outdoor living, which is so much of what we do here in Australia, the interconnection between the backyard and the swimming pool and the barbecue and the living room. We've got this whole indoor-outdoor situation, especially coming into summer now, and we're going to have lots of family around through Christmas or holiday celebrations, etc., etc. So that indoor-outdoor living from Scandinavian design makes sense for us. The minimalist element as well is something that we see a lot in Australian design. And when I say minimalism, I'm not talking about uber minimalism, which is a very different category. So for me, minimalism is just living really considered. Look, honestly, actually, what well-executed minimalism in Australia today means for me is having lots of storage. Because unless you live by yourself and you can perfectly curate everything and make sure everything's in its place, if you've got a family, good luck to you. So the way we achieve minimalism in a family situation or where you've got more than one person is honestly to have really good storage solutions where you can't see the stuff, where it goes away, where you've got a place for everything, okay? So minimalism doesn't happen by accident. It's actually very curated. But uber minimalism is that really arty feeling when you just walk into you might see spaces in magazines where it's just a room and a concrete seat and a single vase, and they go, oh, that's minimalism. To me, that is uber minimalism, and I don't think it's actually remotely practical to live in. It's more of an artistic trait. Of course, there's going to be some people living in uber minimal spaces, but it's very far and few between. So minimalism, I'm just talking about clean lines, fairly pull back color palette, usually slightly warm. So Scandi design has a lot of blonde woods, a lot of light timbers, which we love a light timber here in Australia. It has minimal line, minimal detail. So just nice, clean surfaces, clean walls, a certain airiness to it, and often lots of glass that promotes that indoor-outdoor connection. So I think Scandinavian design works really, really well in Australia. It brings in the warmth, it brings in the light, and it connects us to nature. So that's my number one, Scandinavian minimalism. What else have we got next? Coastal and beach style. Ooh, coastal beach. That might have triggered a few people. I can appreciate a good coastal beach vibe. However, I think far too often it ends up in the category of a little bit kitschy. Because when I say coastal home to you, what do you think? Just visualize, close your eyes, unless you're driving, then keep your eyes open. What do you think? I think of pure white walls, a blue and white striped cushion, and some sun-bleached artwork on the wall featuring a seashell. Which kind of describes maybe a lot of places that you might have stayed in or hotels before, but that's not really it's not designer, is it? No, it's not. So what we have to do with coastal living is, yes, the color palette is still going to be airy and light. Yes, there might still be some blues, but hey, we can bring in some other colors as well, but they're probably going to be quite pastelized and they're going to be really tinted and light. We might have some sand-esque colors, so that's probably where we'd break that really harsh, clean, pure white that you might be thinking of and put in a bit of sandiness, because that kind of connects you through to the sand. I cannot stand rattan furniture. I cannot stand it. So you would not be seeing rattan furniture in my coastal home, that is for sure. I would be finding much more elevated ways to connect with that nautical theme or that beachy theme. And I think there's plenty of choices now in the market. We can choose something really nice. So look, it's not that dissimilar from Scandinavian feeling, apart from it really maybe a slight change in the color feel, maybe less wood. We're thinking a little bit more practically, especially if you are living by the sea. And this is what I'd say to you. If you're not living by the sea, don't go in full ham with coastal. It just feels weird and kitschy. You can absolutely replicate the feeling. So let's say you're in the middle of country New South Wales and you want a beachy home and you've got maybe a backyard swimming pool. Great. Okay, let's think about some sandstones. Let's think about some natural materials. Let's think about using those sandy tones, but we're not putting in the seashells. We're not putting in anchors and blue stripes. It's not Sail Ahoy. We kind of want to step away from that kitsch. We can still create that resort and beach luxury feeling without having to do the really kitschy bits like the anchors and the rope clocks and the seashells in the bathroom. We don't need to do that. So coastal and beach design style can absolutely look beautiful when executed in a contemporary and non-kitschy way. That's what we want to do, right? All right, so off the back of our coastal and beach style, we have Hamptons. Now, Hamptons originates from the state of New York in the US, and it is literally a place called the Hamptons, very close to Cape Cod. And if you've heard both of those design styles before, you'll be familiar with them. So I'm almost progressing through here. So it almost takes some of the feeling of the beachiness from our beach design style, but it blends it with traditional elements. Think crown molding, think really high ceilings, think pocket windows, think those really ornate details, shrubbery out the front, marble flooring, all of those beautiful design details. So this is a design style that I would only attempt if I had a house that supports it, that is going to, so if I'm renovating a house that it makes sense for this to live in. If I've just got a house that was built in 2000 and is just a off the plan home, it's possibly not going to feel very Hamptons. Whereas if I've got something maybe built in the 1920s or 30s or something, or that's got some amazing ceilings and some beautiful window details, then I could go, yeah, I can make this really, really work. Of course, if you're building afresh, you can totally do whatever you want to bring in this Hampton style detail. So what I like about it is the detail. You have the opportunity to play up things like crown moldings, to play up the colorways. It still has a certain warmth in it, but it's a bit more elevated, a bit more formal. When I say elevated, it's not, elevated isn't the right word. Formal is probably it. It's a little bit more formal. So I may be expecting to see a formal sitting room or a formal conversation area as opposed to having the kitchen and living room all together. Does that make sense? It's a little bit more formal than a coastal living. And especially, usually the kitchen is probably the star in a Hampton-style home. We see lots of molding on the panels of the doors. We're seeing shaker-style cabinets. We're seeing lots of just detail throughout the kitchen. Maybe some ornate tapware throughout. Flooring, timber's probably very classic, but I did talk about marble flooring before, or different tiled flooring that's kind of very traditional in style. So I think Hamptons is a beautiful style. It is a little bit, it had a very big moment maybe 5-7 years ago. And look, it's still very much around. I think it's a design style that will stick around for a while. But in Australia, we can put our own little spin on it. It doesn't need to be really, really literally pulled out of the American origins. We can kind of dilute it a little bit, especially if you have a home that has some age to it and has some of its own character and detail. You can weave those two design styles together. I think that looks very, very beautiful. All right, number 4 on my list is going to be Australian farmhouse. So you might have heard of modern farmhouse or farmhouse in a US sense of things. But what is Australian farmhouse? Okay, so when I say to you modern farmhouse in an American sense, what do you think? I think of barn doors with cross bracing. I think of fireplaces. I think of live, laugh, love. Not such a good thing to think about, right? But in Australia, we don't really have homes like that. Our country homes are big verandas. They're Queenslander styles. They're in the middle of the Victorian countryside. They might have chimneys and they might have fireplaces, depending on how cold it is where you get. But we also have the sprawling verandas. You might have an outdoor toilet still, hopefully not. But we just live very differently. We don't really have beams internally, but we might have VJ walls, right? So I think that our take on that countryness can actually be a lot more authentic than in the US, because it doesn't take so much for us to actually live in the country here, where we can go 5 minutes down the road, even in Brisbane, and there's horses in paddocks, which is just so bizarre to me. Every time I go down there, I'm like, what is happening? So I think that modern Australian farmhouse is something that we can actually really lean into. It doesn't have all the American kitsch that is often gets it a lot of flack in the design community. My last one is all about, I guess, respecting the heritage of your home. So if you do have any sort of home that has any sort of character to it, and hopefully your home does have some beautiful character, leaning into that period of time, whether your house was built in the early 1900s, so you're talking about your Art Nouveaux, your Art Decos, whether it was built a little bit later in the we might have something that's a little bit Bauhaus inspired, or mid-century modern if you're in the 50s and 60s. Leaning into those design styles and really showcasing the detail that exists in your home. I was flicking through realestate.com the other day, and just this most incredible 1950s home came up, which was clearly mid-century inspired. But whoever was currently had the home just was kind of trying to hide that fact. It had a beautiful butterfly roofline. It had all of the ironwork at the front with the fantastic starburst. And I'm just like, someone needs to come and paint this thing bright pink and make it shine as a mid-century modern Palm Springs inspired masterpiece. And it would just come to life so much. So if you have a home that has any sort of heritage, character, background to it, lean into it. If you've got a Queenslander, if you've got a little Victorian cottage, if you've got a workers' cottage in the inner city, in the suburbs of Sydney, lean into that. Make that shine, make that the feature. If you've got exposed brick walls because it used to be a warehouse, then lean into it, right? Work with what you've got, make it better. Lean into it, showcase and highlight it. I think I managed to actually keep this a fairly compressed episode today, which is nice. And I hope you enjoyed that little snippet of interior design styles, which I think work really well in Australia. And of course, there's a million more, and I may not have mentioned your favorite one or the one that you have in your home. So why don't you reach out? Let me know what sort of design style you have at home. Maybe send me some pictures even. You can always reach me by visiting my website, disco.design. That's DISKO.design. And if you want to have a consultation with me, book in a discovery call, you can jump over to my website, disco.design/contact. Click on the 20-minute discovery call and just tell me a little bit about your project, and we can just have a quick chat and tell me a little bit about what you're looking to achieve, and we can see if we're a fit to work together. Until next time, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Dave. This is Disco Designs. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time.